Hey everyone, I'm Selena Hill, and this is the new norm on Black Enterprise, sponsored by Cadillac. Today, I have the privilege to speak with Valeisha Butterfield, a globally recognized business leader known for driving impact at the intersections of tech, entertainment, and politics. As an accomplished corporate leader and award-winning changemaker, she has held C-suite positions for some of the biggest companies in the world while focusing on creating measurable results to promote DEI outcomes. Valeisha's career includes serving as the Vice President of Partnerships and Engagement at Google. She also was the first Black woman to ever be appointed as co-president of the Recording Academy, which is, of course, home to the Grammys. She also worked for the Obama administration. She is a published author and the founder of Seed, a newly launched AI-powered multimedia company and storytelling platform dedicated to illuminating the most iconic stories of our times. Valeisha, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for joining us here on Black Enterprise today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. I've been a big partner and supporter to Black DE for as long as I can remember. So wherever I can be, in partnership with you and in community with you, Selena, that's exactly where I'll be. So thank you.
Of course. Okay, so you just released a new short film called The Memo, starring Kyla Pratt under your new production company, Seed. And it's based on a book called The Memo by Minda Harts, which gives an account of the journey she experienced as a young Black woman in corporate America. Let's start with The Memo. I had a chance to preview it. You did a big screening on Martha's Vineyard. Tell us about this film.
You know, Selena, you and I have been in this game for a very long time. And for me, it's been 25 years working as a corporate leader, starting as an unpaid intern and working my way up through the ranks has certainly been a long, tumultuous at times journey. But here we are. And I think so often, we spend a lot of time talking about the microaggressions that happen. We talk a lot about, how competitive it is as women and especially Black women to compete in male dominated fields and industries. But I don't believe we've ever quite seen it through film and television. And so when I launched my venture Seed Media, and I started to just think about what is the first book that I would love to adapt for television and film, there was one answer, and it was Minda Hart's The Memo. And she was such a brave woman, in my view, to tell her story. She talked a lot about how difficult it was as a first generation woman in her family to go to college and to work in corporate spaces, and for her to leave such an important role to tell her story about the microaggressions and the barriers that she faced was brave. And it was an award-winning book, bestseller 5 years ago. And now I'm just honored to be the company and the person to take that book and bring it to the masses.
So one thing I loved about the film is it resonates with, I think, a lot of Black women who have to deal with microaggressions, who have to deal with, subtle racism, and who are literally just trying to make it. What part of Minda's story resonated with you, Valeisha, and moved you to adapt her book into this film?
The most pivotal part of the film, and you all will see it when you watch it, are the car scenes. And so for Minda, the car became the safe space. And she found herself code switching. And so she would go into corporate spaces and, talk the talk, walk the walk, and still not get promoted at the rate of her counterparts and still not get the compensation that she deserved. And so while we tackle through the film pay equity gaps, we tackle through the film the microaggressions about natural hair and whether you can wear your hair, as who you are and what you want to show up as, and not being able to do that. Shout out to the Crown Act. And so when I think about, just all of the barriers that we face, sometimes they are very loud and bold, but sometimes, to your point, Selena, they're very quiet, but very, very intentional. It's like being cut by 1,000 knives. And so many knives. And so for Minda, the car became her haven. The car became her safe space that she could scream if she needed to. She could talk to her friends if she needed to. She could just let it out. And then you'll see through film how she then pulls herself back together to go back the next day. And so that for me was really resonant because I too have experienced, just needing a space to just be myself. And the car has certainly been that for me, and I think a lot of others.
You know, Valeisha, when we talk about Minda, and again the new film you have starring Kyla Pratt, you've been doing this type of work for women just like Minda Harts and just like Kyla Pratt's character your entire career. You know, DEI literally is your thing, whether it was at the Recording Academy or Google. Can you just talk about some of the impact you've made and how you've are transitioning into making impact into this new space?
I always say, Selena, that it's an art and a science. And so often in DEI and in corporate spaces, we're focused on the data, right? The data leads you and points you to the biggest problem that you need to solve. And so I certainly have embedded data into everything that I've done to close critical gaps for people of color, for women of color, for Black women specifically, for Black entrepreneurs and Black owned businesses, women owned and women led businesses. But that's not enough. For me, we also have to infuse art and the power of storytelling to accelerate those outcomes. And so, when I think of my role at Google and the amazing work that we were able to do there to close critical gaps, when I think of the work at the Recording Academy, really proud to have not only served as the first co-president, but their first chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, and creating things that focused on creators with disabilities, creating an inclusion rider for the first time in the music industry, and bringing together all of the major labels and their chief diversity officers to set and standardize goals. But the work isn't done. And so for me, I get excited about the idea of telling stories. I believe personally and very strongly that storytelling and the power of media and entertainment will be the next iteration of DEI. It's how do you transform culture? How do you transform people and minds and hearts? And ultimately, how do you influence and drive change through the power of story? And so when I think of content for change and just our ability to influence the masses and then ultimately tell stories that would have never been told otherwise, that gets me up in the morning, and it's what keeps me up at night because I think it's one of our most important opportunities to drive change.
I love how you describe this next iteration of your career as just a continuation of the work. You've been dedicated to DEI for decades, and now you're doing the same thing in the entertainment space and through your own company. Can you just talk about that leap? Was that a hard transition, or was it sort of seamless?
You know, I was doing it scared, to be honest. I have always wanted to embark on a film and TV, career. I always have, for as long as I can remember. And I would always just compromise my dreams. And I
Mm.
would say, well, maybe I can do it in this way, or maybe I can do it for someone else. And the Grammys was a great platform and opportunity for me to do that through TV, through the Grammy Awards telecast, where I'm still very proud to sit on their board and on the Grammys television committee still. But, I think it was definitely a scary leap. Some have called me the queen of the pivot. And I'll be releasing very, very soon my podcast that focuses on that. But, I think while it's an honor to be considered the queen of the pivot, sometimes we don't talk enough about how hard it is to
Mm.
take the leap. And many of us and those who are watching who have always had a corporate career, who may have always had a 9 to 5 job like I have, the thought of entrepreneurship over 40 years old for me, especially, has been scary. You think about how much traction you've gained. For me, I've gained a lot of momentum working for other people, and I'm really proud of that work. I wouldn't change a thing, but the idea of doing it officially on my own as an entrepreneur is definitely something that I'm proud of, but I'm doing it scared. And I think it's
Mm.
been so exciting, even over the last few weeks, to receive so much support from so many people. I mean, everyone just wants to see Seed, and I think just entrepreneurs in general right now win, right? There's a movement right now of people taking the leap, making the decision to take agency and to start their own businesses. And so, Black Enterprise, you guys have been, a pioneer in that. And so I'm inspired whenever I'm in the room with other entrepreneurs who have done it first. And for me to have the support and the excitement that I've received from day one is just another, affirmation for me. Like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. It's only been a few weeks, but the planning has been years.
So you are a full-time entrepreneur. I
Yes.
love how you said, Valeisha, doing is scared. I just had a conversation yesterday with a young woman who was like, I am so nervous and scared to start my own brand. And I remember telling her advice I need to take myself, do it anyway. How, Valeisha, are you able to push past that fear and just go after this new dream and this new vision?
Well, I think it's important. Well, first, I should say this, Black Enterprise and Selena, you're the first outlet and media partner that I've spoken to about my official exit from corporate America. And I'm so excited about the leap. And I think about, how difficult it is sometimes for entrepreneurs to raise capital. When I think about sometimes the challenges that we have to scale our businesses, to have the digital infrastructure that we need to truly think and act and operate globally, right, in the global marketplace. And for me, I think it's important to not skip the step of being really honest about the journey with other entrepreneurs and to be really honest with the journey because often, we promote this idea that you should just quit your job and start your business. I personally did not do it that way. I spent years doing research. I spent years building an audience and to build, a solid base of people. And when I say an audience, not just followers, but a database of people, right? That I can from, my fingertips, from my laptop, reach with just a few steps. And so for me, I think it's important to build your infrastructure first
Mm.
if you can. Many of us, like me, I'm a mom. I couldn't just take the leap right away. I have tuition to pay for. I have, big bills that I'm responsible for. And so I couldn't just move when my instinct said move. I had to prepare for the pivot. And so
Mm.
building your infrastructure was important, like really having an idea of what you want to do. And for me, I knew it required me to focus, not on three things, but on one thing that I wanted to do and that I wanted to do extremely well. And so that was the first step, building the infrastructure around that, but remaining flexible, right? Because things are changing around us, the environment's changing, the economy's changing. And so being flexible in my plan, but still having a plan. And then the last thing is saving, right? There are a lot of things that I wanted to purchase that I didn't purchase. There are a lot of sacrifices that I made to make sure that I saved, to make sure that I was really prepared for that leap. And so, for anyone out there who's thinking about making a transition like this, I always say if it is possible to have a 1 year runway financially, please do what you can to prepare in that way. But I wouldn't wait, right? So I think, you want to make sure that you do have a runway if you can. But sometimes, right, we do take risks. And so, I think everyone's story is different. For me, I did want to prepare and give myself a runway. And the landing, I've really stuck the landing so far. And it's just been a few weeks. But when I think about, having a film completed and ready to go on day one was important to me. Having a product in hand that was ready for market was important. And so, depending on your business model, depending on your dreams, I think it's important to prepare, important to really think about what you're going to need financially to make that pivot, and then like jump and do what you need to do to take on the risk. Because I think for me, nothing worth having is ever going to come easy anyway.
How would one know when it's time to take the leap? For
Mhm.
those who are preparing, when is it, and maybe feeling on the fence about actually taking that leap? What advice would you give?
Well, I think it's a few things. So the first is truly knowing your market and knowing your environment, right? And being honest about that, because sometimes the things that we want to do, the world isn't ready for, or we may be too far behind, right? And so big for me is building for the future. Again, building for the future. Often we think of ideas that solve a problem today, but really thinking about, is what you're building going to solve the problems of the future? So that's super important because we never want our ideas to become obsolete or extinct, right? We really want to make sure that what we're doing has sustainability. So that's the first. I think also just being honest about not being able to do it alone. And often we want to just do everything ourselves because either it's hard to delegate or we feel like we can't find a great community of people that get the mission. But I would argue that you can. And so really thinking about your village, really thinking about, your board of directors or advisors that can step in to help you scale and to help you, reach more people and just provide more verticals around what it is that you're building and give you that lift that you need. And then the last thing is just, I think trusting your gut and instincts. I think for me, even with the film The Memo, I knew right away over dinner with Minda that I wanted to tell her story, and I went for it. Right? I didn't wait for the perfect plan. I didn't wait for the budget to be in place. I just went for it, and I was able to land that book option with Minda. I knew right away, my gut told me Kyla Pratt was the only actress
Mm.
that could play this role. And I made sure, right, that we really set it up so that Kyla could have the best experience that she could on set. And we did that, right? So thinking about creator equity, thinking about making sure that we have integrity in our projects and on our film sets, which we do. We did everything through the union, SAG and AFTRA project, but then also really making sure that Kyla felt amazing about her experience. So she would want to do it again and she would tell her colleagues and friends about it. But I knew, my gut told me it is Kyla Pratt only that could deliver this role of Minda Harts in The Memo. And she crushed it, crushed it. So just trust in your gut.
Oh yes, Kyla Pratt ate down, as they say.
Take
That
down.
role,
Yeah.
literally born for it. She did such
Yeah.
a good job. And Valeisha, like we see you, you did the private screening of Martha's Vineyard. We see the new film, like you said, ready to go in day one. We also see that earlier this year you launched the inaugural Seed Summit and Awards. So we're seeing, I know we're getting the highlight reel from this transition in your life. Can you talk about some of the challenges you've encountered so far as an entrepreneur, a full-time entrepreneur?
It's one of those things that it's just different. Right? When you work for a major brand like I have, having worked for President Obama's campaign, reelection campaign in his administration, for me, again, having worked for, one of the biggest companies in the world at Google, and then of course work for the Grammys, there's a calling card, that you receive. Like people pick up the phone when you call. People respond to emails when you send them because they feel like there's a huge value attached to, that conversation because of whatever partnership or, whatever they think that could happen as a result of that conversation. But when you make those very same calls as an entrepreneur, it hits different, right? And I think for me, it's understanding that a no is not rejection, it's just redirection. And often, I know for me, earlier in my career, I would feel like a no was devastating and it was a rejection, or I would feel like I had to force things to make them happen and just keep calling and keep calling and keep emailing. But what I've learned in my career and in my life, to be honest, is never force it. It only should flow. And so now, because I'm more clear than I've ever been before, I know the North Star, I understand the value proposition that I'm bringing to the table, and we just make dope project. Like everything we do has a certain bar of excellence, which is embedded in my seed DNA, right? Everything that we do has to be done with the highest standards, with the highest level of integrity, and the highest bar of excellence. I want everything to feel great, to look great and for you to have a great experience when you watch it and experience it. And so because of that, I look for partners that align and get it. I look and seek out, those individuals, those companies those brands that want to meet the moment with us and do this together. And if not, I don't take it personal anymore at all. Like genuinely, I don't take it personal anymore. It's just not our time. It's just not for us. And so, it has been a challenge though, because I think, you feel the slowness sometimes. You do feel, that things are just not moving the way they used to. And I'm okay with that. I'm honestly okay with that because there's a big mantra that says, do you want to go fast or do you want to go far? And while I want to do both, I'm more interested in getting to our goal and our vision. And so that is clear.
Valeisha, I love how you said no is not rejection, it is redirection. There you
Period.
period. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything else that we should be looking out for when it comes to Seed and just this new chapter in your life?
Yes. So not only are we releasing the film, the Memo, soon, we're going to do all the festivals and, you'll see us in your city soon. We'll definitely be doing screenings in major cities and some smaller towns too. I'm from a small town in North Carolina, so that's important to me that we really go far and wide with our screenings. But I'm also going to be releasing and launching for the first time ever the first episode of my podcast. And so the podcast is called Tables Turn, and it's all about mastering the pivot in life. And I think, we don't plan enough at times, what our next steps are, and really making sure that we have a seamless transition in each phase of our life. And so Tables Turn, the podcast, I'll be your host. It's dropping, the first episode is dropping on Women's Equality Day in just a few weeks. And so really excited to share with you how I've done it and how others have done it. Minda Harts will be a guest on the podcast talking about her transition and pivot. Little Rel Howery, actor, comedian, is a guest on the podcast, and a lot of phenomenal stars and leaders, but giving you the real, honest, transparent journey that they've been on to transition and pivot, in their lives and in their careers. And so super, super excited about, again, Tables Turn podcast, a Seed production coming out on Women's Equality Day. And I really just, the goal for me, period, is to reach over 1 billion people. That's the vision through Seed, but only to inspire and empower. I believe, and Minda Harts has said this best, our voice is tied to someone else's freedom. Our voice is directly tied to someone else's liberation. And so when we don't use it, right, we don't know what we could be doing to keep someone else, right, in their isolation. And so really excited about everything that we're working on because it's purpose driven and it's all about us becoming more free and taking agency in our lives.
Love that, Valeisha. Thank you so much again. Valeisha Butterfield, founder of Seed. If you guys haven't checked out the Memo, be sure to check it out. When and where would it actually be released?
So we haven't shared that yet, but
Okay.
again, we're doing screenings, we're doing all the festivals, we're doing all the submissions now, and we will be having next year with a major, major distributor, a commercial release. And so we are moving the short film to a limited series. And so that is breaking news. We will be again, releasing the Memo as a limited series. Super excited about that. And as soon as we can share the platform, we will, but it's going to be big, really big.
Oh, we know it's going to be big. We are geared up for it. Valeisha, thank you so much, not only for your time today, but the impact that you are making, which is so inspiring, especially to the next generation of women of color who have been following your journey and feel inspired and empowered by it. The fact that you keep going despite the bumps and the challenges, we see you pushing through, and it's helpful.
Well, thank you for providing this platform to entrepreneurs because it is not an easy journey, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it. If ever you all who are watching need inspiration or the truth about, how to make these transitions, just know BE is always here and I am too.
Amazing. Thank you, Valeisha.
Thank you.